continue the wrecking and they will still be waiting for us. And the pressure grows to make a save and throw, to introduce some movie, turn the lights down low. My armors exposed, I'm getting full of holes. Think I need another chorus. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man and double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical, critical. That ain't how we roll. Oh no, it ain't stolen. We on a roll. Hey, we on a roll. That ain't how we roll. Oh no, it ain't stolen. We on a roll. Hey, we on a roll. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man and double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical, critical. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical, critical. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man and double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical, critical.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Arvanauts, to a stream that I am very excited about. It is episode 14 of Masters of the Dungeon, our D&D/GMRPG talk show. It is also the beginning of the last stream of 2018, which is very exciting. I have got a lot to go through tonight. It's going to be a very awesome stream. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you folks are looking forward to the end of 2018 and hopefully an even better 2019 to come. Before I introduce the gentlemen who are with me today, just a couple of reminders about ways to support the stream. What's up, Judah Keller? And hello, Nonstop. If you have not done so already, please follow the channel. That is one of the best things you can do. Please check out the YouTube channel with !ArvTube, where you can see past broadcasts of this and other streams. What's up, Ardnell? !ArvTube for that. !ArvCord will get you over to the Discord channel, where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. !Arv tweets will get you over to my Twitter. And please, !tweet. For those of you who have already retweeted the stream, thank you. But if you haven't, please go over and do !tweet and retweet this stream. We like to broaden this out to beyond just the Twitch community and to bring even more people into this community, which would be lovely. !Arv tweets to actually join my Twitter over there. !Arv shop will allow you to check out the merchandise area. Currently just has D&D Infinity and Beyond stuff, but is going to have more than that going forward, so definitely make sure to check that out. !Arv Treon, currently sitting with the Patreon at $381.96. My goal is to get that to $400 by the end of the year, so this is the last stream to be able to do that. We already have gotten to the sub goal that I had, which was over 50 subs. We're actually sitting at 54 subs right now, which is great. So again, subbing will allow you to show those awesome emotes, those custom sub badges that you see with those lovely people. If you support the Patreon, you can get that special diamond badge in chat as well. Plus, you can also get the benefits of being able to get a critique of your writing, we have an epic poem written about you, an epic character background, a copy of one of my band's albums, things like that. So there's many things that you can get here, plus things that you can get for the channel as well. So again, if we can get that up to 400 by the end of the night, it would be lovely. But welcome, and thanks to everybody who's been able to support us so far. That is great. Schedule-wise, we've got this going on from until 9 p.m. Eastern approximately. Then we will be changing gears. We'll be doing the 2018 wrap-up show, where I will basically talk about the game games that I played this year and my top 5 games of the year for me. And then we will wrap up this evening with the Bard's Tale 4 Barrows Deep Day 8. That will ring out 2018, and I will then be back, of course, for you wonderful people in 2019 with an awesome stream to come. So that's what we've got going on. Very exciting, and I can't wait for that all to get underway. Also, if you want to know more about all of that, please check arvineleron.com. That would be much appreciated. Okay. Now, as I always do, I have just unmuted myself, so now the folks are going to know that we're just about ready to go, and then I'm going to unmute them, and last but certainly not least, I'm going to head over there in 3, 2, 1. There they are, and it is, yes, we're joined by Cheez-It, is clearly what we are joined by today.
That was our new yearly sponsorship.
Yes, that's true. And we'd like to thank
Now,
Cheez-It.
do they know that they're your sponsor?
Look, Derek, it's only, this is a 2-step process, and so the first step is sponsoring them. But it is my pleasure to have the Masters of the Dungeon with me today. I do want to make one comment before we welcome Dave in, and that is our good friend Askren. So Askren has been with Masters of the Dungeon since the beginning, actually, for over a year with this show. But Askren is not going to be on the show going forward. He is pulled back from Twitch in general for personal reasons, and so he wishes everyone well. He wishes everybody a happy holiday. He's totally fine. He's not, nothing bad is going on, but he has just decided to move in different directions in general with stuff. And so we thank Askren for being an awesome member of Masters of the Dungeon for over a year and a good DM and so forth. And hopefully we'll be able to see him back in the future if and when he comes back to Twitch. But for now, he's off of Twitch, and so we wish him well. I have already got messages out to several people as replacements, and I'm pretty confident that we will have somebody in short order to jump in on board as one of the regulars with Dave and myself. But in the meantime, I will rely on the strong shoulders of the gentleman right below me, who is currently sitting in literally a library filled, multiple walls filled of books and every other bit of paraphernalia that you could possibly imagine.
Bullshit.
And that is, listen, you're breaking the wall. Don't break the image, Dave. And that, of course, is our good friend Dave, who is coming in. He's fighting hurt today, but he is still managing to do this. So thank you, Dave, for fighting through this and fighting hurt. But how are you doing, my friend? Happy New Year, and how's life with you, sir?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, good to see you again, Greg. And
Yeah,
Derek,
same.
thanks for hanging out with us today.
Hey.
Askren, hope to see you again in the future, man. Take your time and do what you need to do, man.
Yep.
But I'm doing good. Woke up today and went out to just check out the day, and I'm like, wow, there's snow everywhere. So it actually snowed here in El Paso. We
Wow.
had a massive 2 inches of snow.
Damn.
Probably not even that. I'd say about an inch of snow.
So that'll shut down the city for about a week, you would guess? Like,
The last time it snowed was the first day that I moved here, and it literally did shut down the entire city.
awesome.
People, kids, elderly, they were all running for their lives.
Mhm.
Like a Tarrasque was just tearing through the city of El Paso. But everything's going good. I hope everybody had a good holiday. Hope you guys had a good holiday, and let's talk about some games. And yeah, I've been sick for 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling better, and my voice is coming back, so it's a great thing.
Oh, that's good. Well, I appreciate nonetheless you getting rid of a little bit of your recuperation time to hang out
Bottoms
with us.
up.
Always a pleasure. That's awesome. I look forward to.
I've gone through about 3 bottles of these now in 2 weeks. So.
There's always alcohol. It's good for both the hurt on the outside and on the inside.
Yeah.
It covers everything. But always a pleasure. Thank you, Dave. I've already talked about Askren, and again, we wish him well, and we will have replacements going
Greg.
forward.
Thank you for just being you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
I hope that's not a Norwich City
No,
jersey.
this is actually an Irish Rules football jersey, and it's Abbey Hotel's the official sponsor, and I'm not going to pronounce this right Celtically. It's Donegal. And I have a lot of soccer jerseys, and this one, Irish Rules football. I actually had a friend who played in the national championship, which, if you're in Ireland, the Irish national football, like, Irish rules
It's
football is
huge.
it's no joke. Like
It's bigger than football.
Oh
It's
yeah,
bigger than
like
soccer.
oh
Yeah.
my God, they do not joke around. So anyway,
Yeah.
but that's what that is. So yes, but anyway, always a pleasure to have Dave with us again. Good luck to Askren, and our guest star today, who I'm very happy to welcome, is a gentleman that I have been familiar with for many months actually, since we were introduced by our mutual friend and acquaintance John Helfers, who folks here will know. John is the main editor over at Nomnivore Games for Emberwind, which is the game that Derek's gonna talk a lot about today. I'm sure he's not had any questions about Emberwind before. I mean, I'm sure
of
this
course,
is just
right.
this is a whole new
Also,
world for him.
I think the word friend might be a strong word between me and John.
Wow, a personal business relationship. Let us say.
I don't know. Yeah, he's wonderful. He just prefers the term, editorial god.
Editorial god. Yes,
the pleb who worships him.
That's true. And so I was introduced to Derek, and full disclosure, I have, as I mentioned before, I do some writing for these wonderful folks at Nomnivore. And this, of course, is Derek Chung, who is the developer, the head of Nomnivore Games, and also the lead developer of Emberwind. And so, Derek, thank you for hanging out with us. Welcome. And I know that you've gotten this question a ton, and I promise we will not spend all our time asking really simplistic questions. But I have to do this one thing, which is to ask about what alcohol you're drinking. No, not that. I have to actually ask about Emberwind, and if you could just talk a little bit about what it is that distinguishes it in your mind from other RPGs out there, because that's going to lead us, I think, nicely into the topic that we have for today. But I want to ask you first, tell us about Emberwind, if you can give us the elevator pitch.
Sure. Well, before that, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here, Greg. Thank you so much for supporting the project, not only with the channel, but your amazing writing. And, always making fun of John is good too.
That was right. That's key. That was when before I got brought on, I had to be able to make fun of him accurately. So
yeah, there you go. But so Emberwind, I guess. It's a brand new game that we're trying to do some really ambitious things with that have been seen before in RPGs, but not in quite the same way. And what I mean by that is that we're trying to kind of respect the old traditional tabletop RPGs while making the game much more streamlined, much more accessible, much more dynamic, and also do something rather challenging, but effectively a game that can adapt and adjust to your skill level as a player. And the way that we kind of do that, and the way that Emberwind is really built, is around this one nugget system that we call kind of the Rise engine, that simplifies the tabletop gaming experience to a single page of rules. And from there, what we do is we give you all these additional modules that you can pick and choose and employ independently as a player, regardless of whatever anyone else in your group is doing. So you'll end up kind of creating your own custom rule set to support the exact type of gameplay that you want and you're comfortable with, and you can still play with whoever else is in your group without having to compromise. And we've kind of made it in a way where not only is the game something that only takes about 5 minutes to learn how to play, what we tried to do is we've made every component optional so that you don't, for example, need a GM to play when you get started. You don't need a story. You don't need to make your own characters, all that. And you start scaling up and learning those things, at the pace that you're comfortable, and the game will do its absolute best to teach you those things as you go. On the opposite end, which is what's really cool, is that the game will also learn about you as you play, and will start adapting and adding new features to the game to suit kind of your skill level. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is not create a company of gamers who like the game, but really a creative commons or collaborative where every single person who gets involved with this gets supported as a creator, a developer, where you can make whatever you want at whatever skill level you have and still achieve a really good, awesome result at the end.
So, and one thing I want to ask about that before, and I am actually going to get to the other parts of the typical topics for folks who have been watching and are going, what happened to the campaign highlights and all that? We'll talk about that too. But so one thing I want to ask about is, the motivation for this, because obviously, one of the big things that for people who go to conventions, one of the big selling points that was listed was quote, better than D&D. And there were people who talked a lot about like like, really, what are the implications of this? And I mean, part of that I know was meant to be kind of funny, but I do think there's an aspect of it that's serious in that you obviously had experience with a number of role-playing games and playing D&D as a player. So what is it that's missing, or was missing in your mind that Emberwind? Is it the simplicity of it? Is it the way that it learns about you? If you sort of said, the biggest thing that we really wanted to get across with the game that we're developing is what, would you say? Like, if there is an organizing principle for you, what is it?
This is going to sound a little tongue-in-cheek, but I'm entirely serious when I say the guiding principle for Emberwind that I think is missing from other tabletop games is fun.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't mean that as like a put down towards other tabletop RPGs. It's just that I find that a lot of games try so hard to adhere to some sort of structure or rule set that they've developed, where, like, using kind of D&D as an example here, where they get so specific and so nitty gritty with all the rules that you end up not being able to kind of enjoy certain situations. You end up having to effectively rules lawyer it a lot of the time, to be able to work out specifically what they want. Or what happens, and this is what's more common, the player or specifically the GM has to do a lot of that heavy lifting themselves, and they adapt and homebrew and adapt and do whatever they need to make the rules fit their particular playing group. And basically that for kind of those complex RPGs, what ended up happening, or in my opinion anyways, what ended up happening is that they lost the ability to really support the player base, the people who don't have the time to put in hundreds of hours to make this campaign perfect, to adjust and adapt the rules, whatever on that end, or even if they simply don't have like the skills to do it. That audience was effectively kind of being lost or not supported by the games industry. So Emberwind was this game that kind of came to life simply because it's trying to address that type of need. It's trying to make complex RPGs much more accessible to people in whatever fashion that they need that for.
That's interesting, and it's still like complex RPG despite that. Like, is okay.
Like, I'm not talking about Fate or anything like that, because games of that type are much more simple and they are catered towards a specific experience, and everyone has its own specific experiences too. We're just trying to do kind of the epic fantasy thing that typically you'd need like 300 pages of rules to do, just in a much simpler context and format.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm looking forward to actually talking more about that. All right, well, now that we know a little bit about Emberwind, which we will come back to, I will give you a chance to talk about how this has played out for you in terms of gameplay, because I know that you do a lot of conventions, and oh my God, people, I'm not even joking about the number of conventions and cons that Derek does. So, and it's like, and not just him, obviously there are many people on the team who do this as well, but like I just sort of staggered at the amount. So what I want to ask is, typically what we do at this point is we ask a little bit about how campaigns are going for us that we are involved in, either one-shots that we ran or things that were sort of memorable in the game playing space from a tabletop point of view that we want to highlight. So has there been, I want to ask you, a demonstration that you've run, an in-house kind of game that got played, something like that, that sort of stood out to you as being memorable in some way? Fun, exciting, train wreck, like anything along those lines. And I imagine Emberwind is going to be front and center of your response, which is totally fine, but it's up to you. Just give me something that was a highlight of tabletop space over the last few months, let's say, that you're like, that was awesome when this happened.
Okay, so you're right that Emberwind's gonna be front and center for that, because I literally have been living and breathing it. Like there's been nothing else in my life, which is awful. But for Emberwind, the interesting thing is, because of how it's designed to help support the player kind of build whatever they want. One of the most unique experiences that I've had after going through so many conventions this year is that every single person who played the game in either a demo state or like through an entire campaign or something like that, had a very different experience. At the end of the day, like everyone enjoyed it, obviously, but like what they enjoyed was different. How they played it out was different, and
Okay.
that was a really exciting, huge highlight for me throughout the entire year, just because the questions that were asked, the follow-ups, this story thread is something that I'd like to follow versus that story thread. It was all really different, and it was exciting that Emberwind kind of could facilitate that, but it also humbled me where it definitely made me recognize like this is just a starting point. At the end of the day, every game is just the beginning for all the people that are playing it, because they're the creative ones that are going to take it so much further.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Dave, let me ask you. Yours will not be Emberwind focused, since this is the first you ever heard about it. But tell me what has been on your side of things. Is there a highlight of a game that you want to point out that you're like, this was awesome as of late?
Excuse me as I hack out all of my guts again. But actually, I've taken all of December off for my games, and it's just been so hard to try to juggle a full-time job. It's hard to juggle what I've been doing, multiple games every week for 5 years now, plus having my mother moved to Texas with me, and she has some needs as well. So it's been hard to juggle those three, and so games have been very wishy-washy this year for me. And which I'm not used to. I'm used to everything is clockwork and everything is so structured and scheduled. But I started 2 games in November. I started Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is of course Undermountain, my favorite place since I was a kid to go and adventure. It was the first time that I ever saw Beholder, first time I ever saw Githyanki from another plane, first time that our group ran a bunch of times from encounters. And yes, players, you can run from encounters.
It's true.
Don't forget, you don't
it's
have
true.
to.
You don't have to fight everything.
Fight to the death. Yeah, you don't have to fight to the death on every single encounter. Don't be afraid to run. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Everything. That's the thing, is that everyone's a completionist in tabletop, right? Like that's the problem. Like I have to beat this thing.
Yeah. So I basically I took a couple of months off. I also started Waterdeep Dragon Heist as well with another one of my groups. And I'm at this crossroad, and at both of the games, they started out wonderfully. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better start to any game, and the finales to the old games that led up to this. And I'm at a crossroads now to where I am starting to write my own content now and put it on my Patreon page, and trying to juggle games and a full-time job with Fantasy Grounds and everything else that I've got going on. And it's just I need to step back as well, but don't worry, I'm not going anywhere.
It's like, great.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm still staying here, but I'll probably be down to 1 game next year, but it'll be a large game with a lot of players. So that's something that I'm going to try to juggle. The whole thing is, I don't want to let down my players from having, because my mother's been in and out of the hospital since she's moved here 4 months ago, and it's just not been the most ideal thing that I've wanted to happen.
Right.
So, but both games started out great. Sorry to go into my life story, but that's what's going on with my campaigns. They're really not happening right now, but come probably around the middle of January, so I'll have something back up, and we'll start playing again.
Yeah.
But it'll probably be 1 game. It'll probably be D&D 5e. So
do you think it'll be in the Dungeon/Waterdeep
I know it will. Oh yeah, it will definitely be. It will probably still be Dungeon of the Mad Mage, because I like what I've read so far.
Yeah.
But I'm really gonna ramp it up like I did with Tomb of Horrors. So I'll probably make it super deadly, and it may end up being a character sheet grinder. So, but yeah, I'll probably end up doing something like that.
That's going to be cool. I'm interested to hear your feedback on it. It's I definitely liked the idea. First of all, of anything that goes level 1 to 20 catches my attention, but I wanted
First time Wizards has done that.
I know.
Mean, why not utilize? Why did they not make a D&D 5e game with just level 1 to 10? I mean, that's pretty much all their content, except for some modules go to 15.
But that's it. Yeah, exactly. And like always, and so by effectively, you were often wrapping up around 12 or 13 sometimes. You know what I mean? So
most players will never see past level 5. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, most players won't. So
that's good.
Plus, anything over 10 is really not supported. So there's not a massive list of monsters and rules past 15 anyway. So
yep. So I look forward to seeing how. I'm going to be interested to hear your feedback on that stuff. So
utilize all the levels, Wizards. Utilize them all. Just don't put it in
all of the levels.
Yeah,
it's very true. I'm going to mention 2 highlights of campaigns that I run. The first one came from my sponsored Cubicle 7 campaign of Adventures in Middle-earth. The crew there has been involved with that
bundle of holding. By the way, sorry about that.
I'm sorry. Say again. The what?
It was the bundle of holding as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's true. And by the way, the Humble Bundle stuff in general has been coming up with a lot of really good book sets, things from Frog Lord Games and other ones like that.
A lot of great companies are getting involved.
So that's good to see. So they have been going through, hell and back. And I always laugh when I hear people talk about the idea that the problem is it only constructs one certain kind of game. And I'm kind of like, well, AME is a completely different feel than what D&D sort of regular, standard vanilla D&D kind of provides. And so the party has really been dealing with that. And the one that I wanted to highlight was this character that was bringing them as they were sent by Radagast the Brown to figure out this darkness in the marshes, which is the name of that adventure. And so they're in the middle of the Gladden Fields looking for the Dwimmerhorn, this mysterious fortress that was owned by Isildur some time ago and now has fallen into evil and disrepair. And they're traveling through this place guided by this one guy who they thought, they weren't really sure what to make of him, but he'd saved them a couple times and they were like, he seemed like a good travel companion and he had this sort of air of mystery slightly, but they felt that's just because and so of course, curses sudden but inevitable betrayal. So he ended up betraying them to the orcs. And one of my players, whose name is Amal El-Matar, she's a Hugo winning, award-winning author, very fine author. She writes the fantasy reviews for the New York Times and stuff. So she was so angry, and she gets, not at me, but I mean just at the character, and she gets so into the game that she's literally like tweeting about this, like in all caps, my rage level is incandescent. F this guy, like just going off against this character who she really hates, because she just felt like there was, and then she finally opened up to him, and then he betrayed her, and she was so mad. And so that was a lot of fun.
Sounds like my last relationships.
Yeah, this one was all role played out. It was really funny. The other one was in that same campaign. I had Will, who of course, as Dave knows, was one of the original members here until he had to step back because Encounter Roleplay his channel is blowing up and all that in a good way. He had to miss a couple of sessions. He's going to be back in January, but he had to miss a couple of sessions because of a bunch of stuff that he's been doing with Wizards. So he'll be back in January, and so we had this whole moment where he had to go away from the party. The part that I wanted to highlight was a moment between himself and Trendane, one of my other players in my campaign, where he's talking, just the two of them at night. The other two are sleeping, including the guy's in the campaign best friend. And he's talking about how he feels, and he's this kind of dour Liam Neeson style type. He's a ranger, and says, I don't want to tell them anything more. And he does this whole thing with Trendane's character, and ends up with, they won't understand. Tell them tell them that, I need them and I'll return. Tell them I love them. So the other party is like literally tearing up. Like they were really, and everyone chats like, Bible thump, sad emoticon, like the going on. And I was just thinking to myself how amazing it is that here we are on just an average Tuesday in December during the day. And here are these people who are fully invested into what their characters mean to them, and even the temporary going away or leaving of that character. And it really just, again, reminded me about what a wonderful storytelling mechanism role-playing games can be when they're at their best. And so I wanted to highlight that because I really was really impressed. And also, as Derek knows, having watched him play some of the Emberwind stuff, Trendane is a wonderful role player anyway. So, but it was great to see it. And I really enjoyed that quite a bit. So, all right. So let's talk about the main topic of the day. And that is something which I want to throw to Derek first. Actually, let me reverse that. I want to ask Dave a question first about this, and then that'll lead me to what Derek's answer will be, because the subject has to do with designing a new role-playing game. We got some answers to this already. But what I want to ask Dave here is, if you were constructing a role-playing game from the ground up, Dave, you're starting to write your own content, as you said, within a certain system. But if you were designing a system straight up from the ground up, what do you think would be the principles that you would want in mind the most? And that's going to give me a chance to bring that over to Derek to talk about his own experience in doing this. So what would you do? Like, what would your principles be, Dave?
Well, first you would have to try to cater to the masses. I mean, unless it's going to become just a labor of love for you.
Okay.
There's different variables. Are you going to try to make this your full-time job? Are you going to try to sustain and live life this way? There's a lot of variables you have to really think about, in my opinion. But I mean, I'm not a pro at this. I'm new at this, but if I was going to build a game, I would do it something very simple, because I think 3.5 has kind of, and Derek has talked about rule lawyering. I think that has really put a damper. I don't think it's right, because I know a lot of people like 3.5 and love, fallen in love with 3.5 and Pathfinder. But I think that's why 5e is so successful now, is because of the whole, rule lightness to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would try to have something even that much more rule light. I would try to incorporate role play, because let's face it, we're not in the year 1980 anymore, and everything is not just kicking in a door, rolling initiative, or morale checks. Everything is, there's more role play, especially with.
I don't know about you, but I still play like that.
Kicking doors and morale checks.
You can do that. No, you can do that. But yeah, you can definitely do that. But like I'm saying, there's a lot of variables. I mean, if you're going to cater to the masses that way, but yeah, but I think a lot of people do just want to kick in doors and roll initiative and fight 10, 12 orcs at a time and have these massive battles, which I do think are fun. But I want to have a good mixture of exploration. I call it the big three: exploration, role play, and combat. So that's what I try to do in all of my adventures. So, and I'm doing fantasy, I'm doing modern day, and also some sci-fi stuff. So but yeah, and I'm basically just using the 5e rule system for now. But I have actually created a, believe it or not, actually have a D4 mechanic system that I have created, but I don't know if I want to unleash it into the world, because I think people will say, scratch your head, what the F is this D4 system? But it makes sense to me, but I haven't really showed anybody else it. So I think
I'm super freaking interested.
Yeah, I want to know about this D4 system.
I really want to know.
Plus, you'll corner the market on four-sided dice. We'll finally get those pyramids. Will get their love finally.
Yes, all of the big, massive barrels at Gen Con and all the other gaming conventions, they'll be empty of D4s when my game hits the market and just dominates the world.
Exactly.
No.
D12s will be the new nobody plays them hotness, but
yeah. Well,
D3 too, right?
I think that's probably why I chose D4s, is because there's already D8 systems out there. You've got the D6 systems, you got the D10 systems. I've seen a couple D12 systems out there, and of course the D20s. And I'm like, hey, I've never seen a D4 system before. And I think I probably know why, is because there's not a lot of options available to you with only 4 sides of a die. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll talk about it later, but I mean, I would just go on for too long and what my methods are for that. But
I think you just need
But I am going to be using D20 though for for my adventures and stuff. And everything can be converted at some point. So if I decide to go my own way, and once I expand past my first the first part of my world called the Veil, then maybe I might start doing something else with it. So
What were you going to say, Derek?
No, I was just gonna say you just need to think outside the box. Don't think about just the faces. Think about how you can weaponize the D4 in real life.
Right, that's what Light and Passion was saying. Like,
I have a lot of static numbers and a lot of multipliers as well. So that's there's some big damage that can happen, especially with like crits and stuff like that. So, but people like to see big numbers, and I think people like to see big numbers, but not with all of the rules and complexities that can go along with it. Like, oh, I have to add this point and have to add this point. No, let's just multiply it, dude, or something like that. So,
cool. Yeah. This is good. I like it. I will at some point be able to prevail on Dave to reveal all of his secrets. And then when I am sitting in that sweet velvet seat covered mansion, at the top of my D4 empire, as you're like bitterly like, I told that bastard.
I'm sitting on a throne made of D4s.
Now, like the Game of Thrones, but just the D4 thing. Oh,
yeah. And it hurts when you sit down on it.
So I want to ask about that.
About D4s, one thing.
Yeah.
My son, when he was first starting to read my rules cyclopedia from Basic D&D, back when I bought it, back years ago, hides my age, I know. I don't look my age, so that's especially since I cut the beard off.
Yeah, no, I see. I mean, yeah.
My son took my dice and he forgot to put the D4 back into the dice bag. Oh. And that was like stepping on a damn caltrop in the middle of the night. It was on the hard linoleum floor, and the point actually broke the skin on the heel.
Oh.
And I had to pull the dice out. It sucked.
Ow.
But yeah.
Was it a 4?
D4s can hurt. It was a 4-sided. I don't know what it was.
I was going to say. I wanted to know.
All I knew is it hurt like hell, Greg.
Okay. Well, Derek has been kind enough to give me a couple of sets of the Emberwind metal dice. And let me tell you, stepping on that, would be...
That would not be good.
That would be a nightmare.
You haven't tried that, right? Like, not purposefully?
To actually set... No. Well, I mean, not myself. I left a couple of them in the hallways of my classes, but that's, I don't actually hear back from them, so we don't know. Yeah, dicing with death is right, Thorzen. So that actually leads me to this question I want to ask Derek about, related to this, which is, so you hear stuff like that, and I'm sure, Derek, because I know Emberwind has been through a ton of game testing and stuff like that. Does that idea of people want access, they want ease of access to be able to get into these rules. They also, however, want to be able to have their characters be able to do cool stuff that's kind of mechanically handled. Were there moments that you had to change and alter aspects of what you had originally imagined the Rise system / Emberwind to do because of feedback like this? I mean, I guess I'm wondering how closely you listen to feedback of this kind and how much you're like, well, I've got to kind of build the audience that I want by showing them this game, that is my concept and my idea, and then the audience will come. I'm curious how responsive, I guess, you were to feedback, of the kind that Dave is describing in terms of what people wanted.
I was totally responsive, I guess is the way to describe that.
Okay.
Almost no one knows this, but Emberwind originally was a D30 system.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Now,
you hear it here first.
Yeah. Whoa. But yeah, no one plays with D30s, which is why we switched it up to a D20 system in the end. We wanted to make this as accessible as possible. But the integers work a little bit better with D30s and gives us more room to play with. And it was just kind of what we needed to do. At least,
but you got to get the D30 to stop rolling first. I mean, you got to get it to stop rolling because those things don't like to stop. I'm sorry.
The D100s are worse. I think that's true.
Yeah.
So wait, you'll have a director's cut of Emberwind, is what you're telling me, right? Like you'll have the designer's cut, which actually goes back to the D30 system at some point.
I mean, the director's cut is actually a much more complex game. It still exists because some of the original players who played it got to the point where their experience level, literally, real life experience points here, right? They capped out at max level, and they're like, yo, we only want to play the most advanced version of this game now because we can't go back. You've ruined every other tabletop RPG for us. And I'm like, okay, but no one else will understand this. So this is for you guys, and then I'm going to go simplify the game down for everyone else. And it's led to basically this extremely streamlined system. I mean, you had your hand in playing the Emberwind engine already, and
Yeah.
it's crunchy, but it's still very streamlined. And the hope and goal is to basically let that system. Well, it's definitely not as crunchy as it could have been. I feel like we traded up in like a really efficient way where there's a lot more streamlining for the complexity that we lost. Because like, who really cares at the end of the day about having 18d6 plus 4 times 3.82 to the power of log minus 4 damage?
Exactly.
This is where the Shadowrun
That's
refugees are like, you will take my 70 d6s from my hand, from my cold dead
Right.
fingers. But no, you're right. I mean, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain people that like that, but that's kind of the director's cut there.
Yeah.
For everyone else, you've got the normal Emberwind engine.
And by the way, I have to say, so I'm holding the what Derek was nice enough to send me, which is a copy of the Emberwind Skies of Axia book. Again, the art is gorgeous, as people have been saying all the way along. And I'm one of the things that makes me think of during the Kickstarter which you ran for this, which by the way was highly successful, and made, I believe, over 60,000 Canadian, which
Yeah, so, not real money.
Well, see, that's the thing. See, I tried to give him this pop, and he's just like, well, it's only funny money. That's still well over, like, I think 40 something. I don't remember exactly what it is US, but it's still a really good amount of money. And so you had a very active group of people, both in the forums, but also backers that were responding. And so I'm wondering about that also, because since you were this game was already designed and you had a very clear vision, when you got to the Kickstarter where you already knew what the game was going to be, were there more adjustments that had to be made based upon late feedback? So not, the early feedback, but just sort of the late feedback of people that were really like, hey, this is not necessarily, or this is great, do more of this. Like, I'm curious about the part from the later backers that weren't part of the initial group that you had testing it.
So that's an interesting thing. We're still getting, in quotes, backers now.
Okay.
Where like even though the project closed, people are still messaging me and saying, hey, can we get in on this? And that's been really fun. But there's also been a lot of really interesting feedback, because we did something kind of unheard of, and this other people told me is extremely ballsy, which is we released something in the middle of the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We released the beta for the actual product that we were kickstarting, so anyone who had backed the project could experience it, and if they didn't like it, you immediately cancel their pledge.
Yep.
And the reason why we did that was because we wanted to show people, right, that this wasn't an idea they were backing. This was something that actually existed, and that we were very receptive to feedback, and we wanted to make this game as strong and as good as it could be for people.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you. Right?
A lot of Kickstarters don't even come through with their end of the deal. So
Yep.
I've actually backed a few of them, and it is pretty risky and it is pretty ballsy, especially when you give them the opportunity to cancel their pledge if they don't like it. You would have, that's just less hassle you would have had to deal with in the future. So that's a good thing on your part. I like it.
Well, thank you. But one of the things that we tried to do was we actually did the release halfway through the campaign.
Nice.
And within a week of that release, we had already put out a new update. We're actually supposed to be launching another update to the beta, either tonight or tomorrow. We actually worked through Christmas to get that through. Just because
because you're nuts. That's the real reason. Because
right,
you're crazy.
yeah, thanks.
That's
of course. Well, no, we just wanted to make sure that everyone's dollar at the end of the day was respected, that their feedback was being heard, even if we didn't necessarily agree with all of it. And there's some really, really cool ideas there. And Emberwind is kind of built in a way to allow for that, because one of the first things that I recognize, and this is very, I don't want to say it's very different for me as a developer compared to other people, but I feel like it is a little bit after I've met so many others, is that I understand, and I'm extremely humble about the fact that whatever my vision, whatever I want Emberwind to be at the very end of the day, is not the greatest form that it can ever reach. that's ultimately going to come from collaboration, both from the other people that I work with, but also the fans, right? The players who can actively tell me these are the features that they want to see, that they want to experience, and so forth. So Emberwind is designed in a way where we have a almost like online game development model where we update it every week based on that feedback, where we fix it, add new content, direct it towards whatever features, or at least our team's efforts towards whatever features people want to see. And more than that, we even kind of support the community in their development. One of the things that wasn't a part of the Kickstarter, but we're still funneling money towards, is a toolkit, a full dev toolkit where it allows people to create whatever they want, share whatever they want, and possibly even get paid for whatever they produce, so that we don't, take all the credit for that. Right? Because both as people who have run games who've come up with all this cool content, these amazing stories, the only people that ever get to see that is like your fan base, and you put all this work into it, and you don't even get a chance to, get not necessarily money, but any sort of recognition or reward, right? And Emberwind is built in a way where we're trying to support the creative, where it's not our game really at the end of it all. It's actually your game, and that's what we're trying to build, your game with your help.
Yeah, see, it's got a good pitch sort of associated with it also. I have to say that I had a little bit of an experience like that with this, where with the story that I wrote for you folks called Sunlight and Sky, I was paid for it, but in addition to that, and I had not expected that this would happen, very shortly after receiving it, and after you folks, we had done a little bit of feedback, and then you signed off on the final version of it, you're like, this is great, we're going to do a combat encounter. And so they just developed this encounter around it, and this whole thing based upon this story that I had written, which originally came from an original piece of art that they had done for this world. And I saw the picture, and I'm like, okay, and I came up with the story, like pretty much all of it, trying to associate it obviously with, keep it vaguely within parameters, but they developed a lot of parameters based on what I came up with, including different things that were used, these Marlock fruits and things like that were used for them. And that was wild for me. I mean, I love any time that I get to see any of my work show up in other mediums. First of all, that's very exciting anyway, but that was really neat to be able to see, here's this other stuff develop it. And I just felt like it was just this very, I hate to use the buzzword, but it felt agile. It felt like something that it would have taken a larger company, or a company that wasn't focused on things in this way. They would have been like, awesome. And then like 5 years later, maybe information comes out relating to this subject. But this was something that just very within a few days, there was stuff coming out relating to that story. So I wanted to give you pop, because I thought that was really neat, that we were given the opportunity as a creative to have that kind of an influence. That was pretty slick.
Thanks. And if you don't mind, I just wanted to quickly do a shout out to Jay too, who was the artist who created that piece.
Yeah,
he wasn't given any brief, like we didn't direct or tell him what to do. He was just having a lot of fun on the Emberwind project, and decided to just do an extra piece based on the like leftover feelings, emotions, and experiences that he had, and just really tried to test himself. And he produced this awesome piece of artwork.
Yeah, it really is.
And then submitted to us, was like, if you find a use for it, go for it, and then if you don't, that's fine too. I just wanted to share this with you. And we were like, wow, this is awesome. And that's the piece that you took to, and then wrote a whole story, and now it's a huge part of the canon, which is amazing. The fact that we can work backwards like that as well.
Yeah, that's really neat to be able to sort of see that stuff building from the ground up. That's kind of a cool thing. All right, well, I'm going to put Dave on the spot here, and I'm going to say, all right, Dave, assume that you're at a con, right? You're at the newly constructed El Paso Dave Con that you'll be building soon, I'm sure.
We have El Paso Con already.
I know. Well, but once they find out that you're
massive.
there, it's going to become even that much more, massive once they know.
Yeah.
So when you run across,
Sponsored by Cheez-Its.
Yeah, sponsored by Cheez-Its, right? It's all that sweet Cheez-Its money that we're going to get. And by the way, I pulled out one of the sets of dice. I don't know if you can see it here, but these are the dice that is nice stuff. This thing is these dice are sharp.
To your left.
They are. You go. Yeah, well, for the main people, for the folks on the stream. But yeah, these things are sharp. Like the edges of the points of the D4 that would be deadly if you stepped on this
That
in the
would have
middle of
been
the night. Plus it's
Danger.
metal, so
So
tetanus.
heavy.
It's metal, so tetanus also.
I've never used metal dice. I just have not used them because I've always just been too scared to damage a table or something with them.
Clang, yeah, really
Yeah.
interesting. But anyway, so you're walking around at this con, and you come across Derek and company, and they demo this game, and you're like, exactly, Shadowrunner, a true caltrip, and you're demoing this game, and you're like, okay, this, and this. What's the thing that you're going to say to him, like, okay, but I need to see this if I'm going to be convinced to buy it? Like, assume you've heard him give his pitch, you've seen some of the beautiful art. What's the thing where you're like, yes, I'm getting this game because of X factor or not, if you know what I mean?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, first off, I want to see how the game works mechanically. And if it's too rule heavy, it won't be for me because I've always practiced and preached rule lightness in all of my games. So rules are just a guideline. And then I loved it. Derek's mentioned homebrew a couple times. I like to add my own stuff in and change things up too. So that would probably be one of the first and foremost things because it's I don't play a lot of games. I read about a lot of games. But when I read about a lot of games, I just a lot of times will become turned off by them just because of this or that. But not really the mechanics, just the whole theme of the game would have to be a huge point for me. And art, I'm huge on art. And just what I've seen looking at your website here, I really like the art. The art is consistent. It doesn't look like it's by 50,000 different people. I like an art that is very consistent all throughout a book. And I know that's hard to achieve, especially when you want a lot of art in your book and you want to try to stay with just one or two. I know how hard that is. And then I also would say that it was just on the tip of my tongue. So it has to a game has to be supported because I'm a huge Savage Worlds fan. I love Savage Worlds, and I know Savage Worlds isn't meant for this. Savage Worlds has a lot of settings out, and once these settings are put out through Kickstarters or etc., it's like the game is just forgotten about and it's not supported anymore. And that's why I've always loved D&D and always liked Pathfinder because these games have so much support and the entire world just keeps expanding and there's just more fluff for DMs because let's just admit it, DMs toolboxes are their arsenal. And if the more monsters, the more traps, the more poisons, diseases, monsters, NPCs,
the more bad things for players.
Yeah, the more things that you have at your disposal, the more that you can prolong, keep going with that. And of course, you can make up your own as well. I understand that and realize it, but I don't have the time, and most DMs don't have the time that they want these at their disposal and they want them at the end of their fingertips so they can easily access them. So I would also have to say support for a game is also a big thing for me. So that's what I'm looking for.
Can you speak to that, Derek? Because I think the support thing is something which is pretty important. I know from behind the scenes. By the way, I apologize for those who are. My son has decided to weigh in on this conversation from down the hallway. So just
beat that kid. Just beat him.
Very loud sound you hear.
Put the D4 right.
I'm just gonna throw some caltrops out there, right? Because that'll keep him from being loud. You want to hear loud? Wait till he steps on this. But yeah, Derek. So respond to that if you can. Like what? So assuming that you had heard something along those lines, what would be your comment about the general support? Not just oh yeah, we'll always be here, but what specific aspects of support? Because I know this is something that you talk about quite a bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to come from the angle of Amberwind again, because that's the game that I work on. But Amberwind kind of addresses and does everything that you're asking for it to do, Dave. If you were to walk up to, let's say, a booth where I was running this, it takes all but 5 minutes to learn all the rules to be able to play the game. And support-wise, what we want to do and what we are doing is we're releasing new content for the world every single week to 2 weeks, depending on if we're at a convention. That's all available for free. That's actually where people like Greg come in. They write a fantastic story. We get some cool artwork, add new monsters, new maps, new locations, new threads, new modules for the game. That it's just always growing more and more expansive to give you that ability to build whatever you want. So yeah, live support is huge for us, and we really do support this game, and we will literally as long as we can.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that you have on your website. I've kind of been sneaking around. I've been looking at.
Enjoy,
And
yeah.
you have these roundups. Are the roundups the expansions for the games, or?
So what we do is every week we release a new expansion, and it's for free. It's either a new story or a new monster or a new map or all of the above, or it could be a bigger project like that vignette that Greg wrote. And the roundups are just a simple, accessible way for you to digest that. We basically grab together a month worth of news and put it together into an actual publication that you can just grab and enjoy. And it's always for free.
That's cool. Yeah, I figured that was probably going to be the additional content added into the game. That's cool. I like it.
Yeah, one of the things that has been interesting to me looking at this from behind the scenes too is the amount of effort that's put into thinking about how this is likely to be received, how to just continually working on the level of communication. And so one of the things that's interesting to me about that is the idea how the way that the company approaches marketing the game is somewhat related to what I think is ultimately going to make or break, I assume, Emberwind as a game and the Rise system as a game is the ability of folks to communicate with the developers and the designers, as you said, kind of almost collaboratively building the game together, but also to work with each other even within the game on a mechanical level. Because having played that first one, and I played this Skies of Axia campaign, the game, you're right, the game is crunchier than it might seem, despite the kind of streamlined way in which it's presented. And so you had better work together. Like a lot of people going off and just being like, solo murder hobo, I'm going to one man this instance, like that is not going to work. When you are, and I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but if you get a chance, you can go back to I think it was in September, October when we did the one played with myself, with Brahms, with John GMing, and then later on Derek GMing, Trendane and Sod. And we really, really had to work together because some of the environments were, first of all, the world was foreign to us. We didn't know, I've been playing D&D for 30 years plus, right? But I had no context for this other than what John had told me and, what I'd been able to see of the books beforehand. So I had like a couple of weeks of knowledge as compared to 30 years. And so all of this was new to us. And you really had to work together to make some of the abilities and the synergies operate, or you're all going to die. It was very much a cooperative experience, which I happen to love. So I think that's also interesting to me. And I want you to comment on one other thing, if you can, about this, Derek, and then I want to hear what Dave thinks about that. And that is the idea that the game adapts, as you said, and that you can theoretically have people within the game playing it in different ways while having the same adventure that they're going through, if that makes sense. How do you do that? Because there is basically a way where different players can play at different levels, even though they're playing the same adventure at the same time. And that kind of blew my mind when I saw that was happening. And so I'm curious if you can talk about what the concept was behind that.
Sure. I guess the easiest way to put it is that we have a core engine, which is that single page of rules. And then each player can adapt to kind of what their particular desired playstyle is. And you can add in particular rules, add in particular content, which doesn't skew the balance. It only changes how you play and interact with the game. And the way that we accomplish that, if I can use like an analogy that I'm not sure everyone's going to get, is that we play with a concept known as like resolution. Like if you're playing, if you're looking at an image, for example, that's low resolution or high resolution, the final image is the same. But how grainy that is and your like minute control with how zoomed in you get is what changes up with that analogy, I suppose. Yeah, right. So that's basically how Emberwind works. We give you the ability to alter the resolution without changing the final image. as well as kind of what types of filters you like playing with to get kind of the exact look you like the image to be in.
Okay, so some of us are playing sepia pixelated, and others are playing HD 44, whatever, like 4000
with
4K. Is that what we're
Chrome
saying?
filters and whatever else. Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure. I want to know who was who. Was John providing the sepia? Like, was he? And you came in and you were like HD. I just want to know like how this all went down.
I mean, I wouldn't call him sepia. Dated still, sure, but not sepia.
Quality Wisconsin level 800 by 600 resolution.
Oh,
all right.
yeah.
Big CRT monitor.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, noir. There you go, Shadowrunner. Exactly.
But jokes aside there, basically, Emberwind lets you kind of choose the tools that you want to play with. We introduce you to the basic kind of core set where everyone who's played a tabletop game or hasn't should be familiar with the fact that, and it's a simple concept. When you engage in a role-playing encounter, you're going to roll a d20 against a target number, and whether you succeed or fail is based on the number you get, right? And that's known as generally a skill check in tabletop games. But when you do that type of thing, you're not really role-playing, you're role-playing, right? The ultimate determination doesn't matter how you play through that scene unless your DM says so. It's just on that final number result.
Mm-hmm.
And we leave that as a base system. You can play with that because it's simple to understand. But as you get better at that, and maybe the people who really enjoy the role-playing aspect of it all, they can substitute that entire system for a deck builder where we reward your actual role-playing rather than your role-playing. And in that system, how it works is very simple. Let's say, Dave, you and I were playing together. You're the storyteller in this moment. I'm the player. And I want to utilize a skill against a particular NPC or something like that, a situation. Emberwind uses a roll equal or under system, and basically every number on your die is equal to a percent. So on a d20, having a 10 means that you have a 50% chance of success, a 12 means you have a 60% chance of success, and so forth. Using that standardized percentile, we can convert that into cards, where you'll have a deck where 12 of those cards, if you have a 12 in, let's say, athletics, will be successes and 8 are failures. And depending on how I role play through the scene with you, every time I do something that successfully supports it, you'll add success cards to the deck. Every time I flub or do something that really sucks, you get to add fail cards to the deck. And there are a bunch of other nuances that you can add to it, but ultimately the effectiveness or your success rates are determined by the actual acting and role playing that you go through in that scene with. Now, and the other kind of part that Emberwind kind of is fun is that it gives you all these really cool suggestions and variants. Like, what happens if I want to play around with partial successes and partial failures? What happens if I want to play around with cool role-playing powers determined by a class and so forth? And all those variants are modularized add-ons that you can do, which change up how it plays, but it doesn't detract or restrict how other people are playing the game as well. Like, someone else can just stick with the simple die system and just play that way too.
That's good. I like that, the options. I like that. But then I remember you were saying that it doesn't deter from the core one sheet page of mechanics either, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's good. I like that. 'Cause, like I said, players love options, man. I've always said that with class building, with, not being told no if they want to go over here, don't tell them no. I mean, yeah, that's cool. And plus, when you give them more options, they can kind of add more mechanics and stuff, as long as it doesn't deter them away from the main sheet of mechanics. That's a good thing, because you're making your players happy, and you can keep them more engaged to your story and everything. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, letting people play the way that they want to play is usually good for keeping engagement up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Derek, how many people would you say, just roughly speaking, based on the many people that have played this game and that you've had feedback from, how many of them would you say have really been interested in a GM, in what the system can do without a GM? And how many of them have wanted to play, would you say, with a GM? Because the GM is so ubiquitous to this experience. Like, tabletop is so driven, by the GM, for multiple reasons. One, because the best artificial intelligence is natural intelligence. The best artificial intelligence is a GM behind it. But how many people would you say have been fascinated by the ability not to have one as compared to having one, would you say? Do you have a rough sense of what that's like?
Yeah. Basically everyone. is interested in the GM free option.
Okay.
The people who are experienced tabletop gamers are the type that want a GM, except the people who are GMs all the time. They want to be able to play.
But I do want to be able to play.
A little break, yeah.
Yes, I know the feeling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's where
So
Moon became so successful. Choose your own adventures and stuff like that.
Yep.
I mean, hell, basic D&D and advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition had solo modules that you could actually play. So there is a want and need for that kind of stuff.
yeah,
For sure. Been around for 30 years.
In fact,
Everwinds brings that back, actually.
That's right. In fact, just one quick thing. In the Red Box, as you guys will probably remember, the opening adventure in the player's handbook is this adventure where you go into this little dungeon and you play this cleric and you da-da-da-da. And it is written out like a choose your own adventure, which people were familiar with. And I still remember very distinctly how cool that was. And then right afterwards, it's like, now go forth, you who is reading this, and you make that happen for players. And I'm like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
But
a lot of
the
people
that
don't
was
know
the
this,
principle.
but they did that for 4th edition too, and the Red Box
Right.
set for 4th edition.
Right. Yep.
They did that as well, and then you went into the the 4th edition adventure with a group. So yeah,
Yeah.
they did it then too.
Yeah, sorry, Derek. I just thought about it. It just struck me. That was really.
Yeah, my bad
Oh,
too.
no. Yeah, no, it's perfect.
DMs just love to just talk, so I'm sorry about that.
I know.
So the whole like GM free option to the kind of experienced player is appealing, right? Like as an option, not as a requirement, because people do like to gravitate back to, okay, I've had my fun. Let's get back to the real meat of it and being able to play with the GM, which is why it's optional rather than like excluded from Emberwind. But the amount of people that are actually experienced tabletop gamers compared to the general public is very few and far between. So one of the really cool things, and one of the reasons why I attended so many freaking conventions, is because Emberwind is built in a way to bring in new audiences. It's meant to be a tabletop game that offers something so that veterans can enjoy themselves without alienating the new player. Like, hopefully my girlfriend's not around to hear this, but basically, like, my girlfriend Jen, who's absolutely amazing.
Oh, whenever this begins with a bunch of qualifiers, who is one of the finest, kindest
exactly.
people on the planet?
She hates reading. She hates complexity, and she was someone I really wanted to involve in playing my game, right? And she wouldn't do it if the game was complex. She's the type of person that's like, if you can't say everything you need to say in 10 words or less, get out type.
Okay.
Yeah. So I took that as a challenge and started simplifying Emberwind down without trying to lose any of the nuggets there. And at the end of it, this is kind of what came from that, but she's capable of playing the game with me. We're capable of sharing that experience. And I know there's so many tabletop gamers out there that know that exact thing, where they're a super experienced thing, but they have friends, maybe a significant other, something like that, who are like, this is cool, but I never want to get involved because it's just too much for me.
Yep.
And Emberwind is meant to bridge that gap without sacrificing anything for the veteran player.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of the conventions we went to weren't board game conventions. We went to anime conventions, Comic Cons, video game conventions, and people loved it. People hopped on, enjoyed it, played it, had no problems getting into it. But the main challenge for all of them to be able to do that was the fact that they couldn't get anyone who was skilled enough to be a GM to run their game. So once you remove that from being an issue, a ton of people immediately became interested. A ton of people, after experiencing kind of the pre-written stories that we had, were like, this is really cool. I wonder what it would be like to make my own game. And that kind of motivated or even started a new generation of GMs. It's like a super tiny generation because we're, starting, but, yeah.
A small but powerful generation.
We hope.
Yeah, that's pretty neat, though, because I think one of the things that we've talked about previously with others, this is a show that talks quite a bit about the experience of game mastering and how the hobby is desperately in need of it. In fact, I would argue that probably the biggest sort of challenge facing role-playing in general at the moment is the need for game masters. We don't have enough. We don't have enough different kinds of game masters coming from different places and different backgrounds as well.
You can actually get paid for that. I know one of my friends makes this full annual salary on just GM games for people.
Yep. Oh yeah. And I've seen, and they have these even like, Roll20 has stuff like this as well, where Roll20 has like literal like people that will put up stuff and like you pay them. To me, it would be a weird alteration for me to start charging for that. I mean, it would be odd to be talking to my players that way, but that's because I grew up, playing these things, and it'd be just kind of strange. But yeah, I mean, it's true, and so there is desperately a need for that. So anything you can do that sort of takes away that concept, I think, is valuable. The other thing I want to say is that it doesn't also require you to do what sometimes these games manage, which is where they put everyone in a given role and one person ends up playing against everyone else. Good example of this is Descent, right? Fantasy Flight Games method of doing this, where you've got an overlord and the problem with those is that essentially then you're putting one person again in the position of, I'm the person who calls the shots and everyone else is battling up against them, and it's asymmetric and there's different things you do to balance that out. But if you are like me, and I obviously love dungeon mastering and game mastering, what I don't want to do is become an enemy to my players. I play enemies. I don't want to be the enemy. Dave obviously has gone a different direction with his games, where he is the greatest villain. I'm just kidding. I was thinking about what you were saying earlier today, Dave. I'm going to make it super deadly. But no, I mean, like, in general though, if DMs who run antagonistic campaigns don't last very long, I don't think, because people eventually start taking all of that stuff personally. That's a difference between being antagonistic and being challenging and running a deadly dungeon, and everyone knows it's deadly going into it. That's a whole different thing. But people who are literally going out of their way, and I've played in a couple of campaigns like this, where people are going out of your way to try to kill you, and it becomes this very competitive, I don't know. I'm sure there's some people who like it. That's not my bag. I don't enjoy that as a game master or as a player. So having the experience of working together cooperatively in something like this, I think, is pretty neat, even though it must be hard to kind of balance it all out, I suppose. Because I did want to say, Derek, I had noticed too that there were some who said this is great, but we also would like more. We would like more to be able to create more characters and do more stuff. And there were people that I know wanted to flex outside the bounds of the rules, right? Is that fair to say? Like that,
Yeah,
of what they saw?
Always will be the case, which is why when that happens, or why we use a live development model, we're hoping to get as much of that within kind of our target zone as we kind of expand that target zone to make sure that everyone is getting kind of as much official support as they can. Even if like ultimately what you create is your own thing and it's your homebrew, we want to make sure that it's recognized and supported by an actual dev kit that helps you do those things rather than just leaves you as a creator all on your own.
One last question about that, and then we'll move on to talk a little bit about product stuff, and then we'll take questions from chat. One last question about that. Are there things you'll say no to when it comes to this? Like, will someone be like, I really want to do this, and you're like, yeah, that's D&D or whatever. Like, that's not what Emberwind is. Are there things that are going to say stuff that, you know what I mean? That's, I guess, my question. Are there things that you would say, I can't allow that to be part of the Emberwind world in the same way?
Oh, totally. Like, there are definite things that Emberwind won't be and can't be. And, like, those two things are very distinct. Like, the game engine is built where the meat of it comes down to, for example, like in the combat engine, this crunchy cooperative combat. One of the things that I really don't want to do, though it kind of will be added in some sort of variant at some point, is the idea of like player versus player combat. And all the abilities in the game are built in a way where it's specifically like supportive things target other heroes, whereas your offensive abilities specifically state that it targets foes. It never states that you can target a hero with, let's say, your heroic strike or something like that. Yeah. So, if like, I don't want to open up a huge like can of worms here and have to talk a bunch about this too, but
yeah, but that's hard not to do with PvP and D&D. Some people just want it, but I would have to say that is the minority of players. The majority of players don't want PvP. But I mean, squeaky wheels always get the grease, though. You know what I mean?
I mean, I disagree with that fundamentally. Like, I have particular philosophies about what game design should look like, at least what I want it to look like, right? And
Yeah.
Emberwind is ultimately going to adhere to that, because without those base kind of foundations or axioms, there is no game, right? So within kind of that point, how far I can pivot is as far as I'll go, but anything beyond that, not so much. And that axiom specifically for Emberwind is what is the minimum experience you need to have coming into playing this game where you'll feel like this was a meaningful, enjoyable use of your time, right? And for me, and this comes from my philosophy and psychology background, because I'm a psychotherapist for my day job. It's from meaningful, collaborative, and constructive interactions with other people, rather than antagonistic ones. And that is even boiled into how the GM module works for Emberwind, where it stresses at its absolute base that you are working together with your players to create the greatest epic you can, rather than one where you're pitted against them, actively trying to kill them while they're trying to ruin your story.
Yeah. And that's the difference, right? It's the difference between someone who creates obstacles for each other and where there are tensions, all of which is making the story better. Because a story where everyone just pulls together, the Magnificent Seven, where the seven don't ever argue with each other, is not interesting, right? But the Magnificent Seven, where it's seven individuals that never work together as a team, that also sucks, right? That's why the Avengers work as a group. And the moment that you think the Avengers are the baddest ass moment in the movie is when the Avengers all land together and the camera's sweeping around them. And for the first time, you see them assembled as a team. If that whole movie was nothing but them just beating the shit out of each other, and there are moments where it happens in the movie, but it's not the end result. It's not the end game is to try to get to that. Then the whole thing collapses on top of itself. Again, leaving aside specific aspects of things, but there were games for that. Like, there were plenty of super competitive type games. I don't know. I don't think that most of the games are that way. Even, right, Dave, even campaigns you've run that might have had sort of neutral evil or chaotic evil bents, if the whole game is just people at each other's throats, like, that the game doesn't collapse. Yeah, like it just...
Actually, yeah, I had a game collapse like that one time, probably about 4 years ago, and I just pulled the plug on it. I just said, it was to a point to where they were cussing at each other and calling each other names, and I just stepped in, and I'd never seen that before. And,
yeah, wow.
Dungeon Master's guides and Game Master's handbooks, they don't talk to you about stuff like that. Everything's, unicorns, ninjas, and and roses and DMGs. It doesn't tell you about the true nightmares that can truly happen. So I just pulled the plug on it, and I said, "Thanks for playing, everybody."
Yeah,
that's it.
And it's sad, but it's like, otherwise, what are you doing? So
yeah,
I mean, there's, in my opinion, there's enough salt in the world from competitive games, and if that's what you'd like to play, like, go play Overwatch or something of that genre where it's actually competitive.
I
but
agree.
In games that are, at least in the tabletop RPG realm, in my humble opinion, everyone is really attached to their creations. It is a sharing of kind of your creations, pieces of you with other people, and it's a genre that's meant to build each other up rather than tear each other down.
Yep.
And because of that, if there are players who want to experience, let's say, PvP in a tabletop RPG, Emberwind may not be that game, and that's where I might draw the line.
Go
or
play
if I
Dark
do,
Age of Camelot, or
yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the, I was thinking about this, the sort of esports thing with some of the RPGs that Will's involved in some of that. But even that is team-based, right? Even that is people working together, not just everyone out for themselves. And that's different, it seems to me. So, but anyway, yeah, I find it very interesting to sort of see how that process works. And we've talked before on the show about ways to sort of head those problems off at the pass. But I'm always curious, and I've asked that of many video game developers as well, Derek, about, principles, the time that they have to say no to the super talented people on the team, or to the really smart and able beta tester, who says, what about this? Like, what are the moments where you're like, that is not a path down which I can go? Those moments are not easy when you're trying to be expansive, it seems to me. And yet there are moments where you got to do it, or you don't have a game. You just have a kind of a collection of desires. And sometimes MMOs, I think, run into this problem where they try to adhere to everybody, and you just end up with an unholy mess, instead instead of an actual focused product. So I was just curious
Yeah,
for that situation.
one of the most important questions for anyone who's thinking about getting a game design is to identify your audience. Or it can be as wide or as narrow as you want, but at the end of the day, you have a defined audience, and your game needs to facilitate the best experience for that audience and not everyone else. It can kind of loosely or even accidentally do stuff that's right for other people, but like it's really got to be focused around them. And Emberwind itself has that built into one of its design philosophies that a lot of people won't agree with. Dave, you were saying earlier how like you need the big three in a tabletop RPG. Emberwind is built around the big two, and we specifically split out combat from role playing, right?
Mhm.
And adventuring is put into role playing as well.
Yeah.
And
oh, yeah.
your maneuvers, your actions, all your special cool class powers that are available in combat by default aren't available in your role playing situation, which lets us build a much more crunchy, balanced experience for different classes and allows them to have all these different roles, and you get so much build variety, and that's the real strength of Emberwind. But we lose out on a little bit of that immersion that you get in D&D, where let's say, I can cast the spell from my spell list to create food and water, but now I'm down a spell for the day, right? Yeah, that's one of the things we decided, like, this is the way that we wanted to go. But because of that, the system only supports certain types of experiences, and we just have to say, sorry, this isn't the right fit for you if you really want that 100% immersion. But for us, kind of on the Non-War Games team, we just said, it's a game at the end of the day. There are going to be limitations to every game, and I think people are going to forgive this for what is otherwise a 99% enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
But for the 1% that can't, there are all the other games out there for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not yours. No. But
Yeah.
well, let's so let me move on to talk a little bit then, because I want to make sure that we get some time in for questions too. And I agree, by the way, with some of the stuff that's been talked about in chat about, causing conflict with other players in and out of game. It's just not needed in sort of a personal game time. And you're right, Judah. We've talked about that too. Breaking up a regular campaign with a sort of different style, like a one shot to recharge and reset the group. I 100% agree. I think there are times where that can really be helpful. It also helps sometimes to break up those groups and play with different players on occasion if you can do that, because that's just it'll either make them feel, oh, this is what our group could be, or it could make them feel, thank God I have my home group, and I don't have to play with these clowns again. But whatever it is, it sort of gives them a sense of something different. So I agree with you entirely about that, Judah, about making that work. So I want to talk a little bit about, give us each a chance to talk about a product here. The idea here is to sort of talk about something you've used, and it can be from your own game. It can be from something else that you've sort of admired, that you've been like, I picked this up and really liked this. This was really cool. I read this book that inspired this, or I played this game that inspired this. The one I want to highlight for today is one that I actually played on my channel as part of a Dungeons & Dragons with Viewers special thing called Not a Creature Was Stirring. This is a module that I actually bought from DM's Guild for a few bucks, actually, by a guy named John Witt. And I wanted to mention it because this is something for someone who was growing up in the 80s. I was constrained more or less to whatever I developed or to whatever TSR at the time was publishing, right? So there weren't a lot of extra things. You could go to Flying Buffalo and try to take a Tunnels and Trolls thing and kind of modify it, but it just wasn't really the same thing. And so having the opportunity to just jump online and be like, I would like a Christmas adventure, and go and try to find a Christmas related adventure. And first of all, there's like 8 of them that pop up. And not all of them are good. Some of them were kind of problematic and looked that way. But this one was a really good sort of construction of things. And it begins with the characters waking up to this pounding on the door of the tavern where they're all staying. And they come out and they're battling flying wooden toy swords, each one of which has a tag on it with their individual names on it. And something about that really struck me as a way that just sort of got things underway. They end up going up, and I won't spoil it for people. You can take a look and see what it's like on my YouTube channel. And going up and exploring this character who had been basically made bitter by the village and was going to get back at them in his revenge and all that. But it was Christmas themed. It was interesting. There were different aspects of it that were unusual. It was a little creepy. There was a little bit of, are we battling the Krampus? All of that like sort of experience, the Christmas experience was there. But
Krampus.
yeah, exactly. But I liked it because I thought it was not obvious, like you must fight Santa Claus or something stupid. Like it wasn't that on the nose, but there was a sense that it was very winter themed, holiday themed. There was a little bit of darkness to it. And what surprised me was I posted that, and I had several comments from people also who contacted me privately to say, I'm running this for my family because I ran it about like a week before Christmas. So they were like, I'm running this on Christmas Eve. This was really helpful for me. Thank you. Because I'm running this for my, these people that are going to be friends from out of town. And they were also looking for similar adventures, which I thought was neat. So you can get it on the DM's Guild. It's a kind of thing that is not, you don't have to play it around the holiday time, but it definitely fits that time period. Built for 2 to 5 level 1 characters. Not a Creature Was Stirring is the name of it, by John Witt. And it just was nice, well self-contained adventure. So I wanted to give that a pop.
Did you say John Wick?
No, not John Wick. John Witt. John Wick.
Okay.
No, John Wick I love for other reasons. Freaking The Wilderness of Mirrors is amazing, but no. But no, not that one. Also, we didn't kill his dog, so there was that too. So, Dave, what do you got? And then I'll finish.
Killed a dude with an effing pencil.
All right, so Derek, I'll go to you next, and then I'll finish up with Derek on the product stuff. So,
So a couple for me. First off, if you are an Adventures in Middle Earth fan, there is the bundle of holding. There is still 6 days left.
Yes.
On the Adventures in Middle Earth, so I just wanted to kind of shout that out. And also for a couple of items, everybody knows that I am a connoisseur of miniatures. So this month, the new Ravnica Icons of the Realms came out. The new series, so I opened up a case, of course, like I do everything. So here's all of the large ones, and there's some really nice miniatures too. Not only will they work for Ravnica, they'll work with any fantasy. I mean, these things look really good. A whole bunch of small ones, but I've got I haven't got shelves yet because I just moved into the new house a couple of months back, but I've got probably about 25 boxes like this, just massively just packed full. Hopefully one day I'll get those. I also got a gift, like a Christmas gift from Wizards of the Coast. It's the new Dungeon Mayhem card game. Cool. So I've watched a couple of videos since I haven't been feeling well. When I'm laying in bed suffering, I'll just kind of get on my phone, and I've watched a couple of gameplay videos on this, so I'm definitely looking forward to playing this. You can play it by yourself or up to 4 people, so that sounds fun. Talking about solo adventures, game boards and card games are getting smart too. When bored people are sitting around the table by themselves, this is a good thing to do. So if you're going to create a board game or an RPG or a card game, make it for 1 to X amount of players. So,
yeah. Co-sign 100%. Solo stuff is really a lot of fun. Yep. Totally agree.
Yep. And then I got of course, as you can see behind me right here, all of my flip mats. I got the new Pathfinder Pirate Ship, which is a remake. All the classics are old remakes from the original mat packs that they put out years ago.
Mm-hmm. I still have a blank mat pack, I think, that I got from them, which was like really useful, even though I didn't use it on Pathfinder.
Yeah, the terrain ones.
Yeah, terrain ones. Yep.
They have a grass, a stone, a dirt, and a water or something like that.
Yep.
So you get 2 double-sideds, and they're all dry erase, which is nice. You can draw the walls of your dungeon or the walls of your castle, or draw little fluffy, honey badgers or unicorns or whatever you want.
Cool stuff. That's awesome. So, Derek, what about you? Is there one that, and again, I know you've been eating, breathing, sleeping Emberwind. You could certainly highlight like this cool, we released this foe and it was really cool. Or if there's something like outside Nomnivore or your own company that you've been like, this was really neat that I saw at a con or elsewhere, lay it on us if such a thing exists.
Sure. Well, this is sort of Emberwind related and not. But I don't know if anyone's ever heard of washi tape here. Yes, no,
Washi tape.
probably not. Washi tape is a phenomenon that's very popular over in Asia, and it's kind of picked up in the anime scenes, but not really anywhere else, though like Staples and everything is carrying them now. But washi tape is this. This here is a roll of tape, and washi tape is this kind of decorative paper-based tape. The glue is a lot lighter. It almost feels like Post-it notes
Okay.
to a roll of tape. But you'll notice, if you look very closely on this roll, that there are squares on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So what this roll of tape here is, if I were to kind of pull it out and snip it, is a procedurally generated dungeon.
A procedurally generated tape dungeon. I love it.
As soon as I saw that, Derek, I was like, light bulb went up over my head.
Ding!
Right,
That
yeah.
looks really cool.
So there are a couple people by the name here. I don't know if you can see that, but Tokyo Washi Tape that has created their own tabletop game that plays by tape, which is really freaking cool.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
But
That's really cool.
yeah, and what we're hoping to do with this same tech and idea is that we're going to be producing simple ways for people to kind of construct maps or obstacles and tokens and everything on maps with, you know, a tape roll of, let's say, trees and forests and yada yada, just to make life a little easier than having to dry erase 400 things off of your battle mat.
That's really neat. I just pulled up this thing. I have never heard of this before in my life. Now I'm like, wow.
Of course
that
not.
is-
Yeah, you heard it here first.
I have heard it here first. No, I see it at Michael's Papercraft washi tape and like
Yeah.
blue washi tape. Wow. This is very dramatic. And
Yeah.
kawaii washi tape. Well, okay. I mean, obviously.
Of course, kawaii.
That's pretty cool. This is clearly see, this is great because this means my daughter, who's turning 11 next month, my daughter will bring this to me and I'll be like, I've heard of washi tape, of course, previously.
You're the cool
I'll be
dad
like-
now, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be like, before anyone knows, I'll just be like, of course, I'm fully aware of the many uses of washi tape that, you know.
Greg, cool dad and mom jeans.
Yeah, well, like, right, exactly, in mom jeans, exactly. Well, isn't it? I mean, like that, like some of that stuff she has, she got for Christmas this, the return. I don't know if you folks know this, but like basically the return of the Polaroid in the Fujifilm smaller Insta cameras that are now a huge deal with the younger set. And I remember I had a Polaroid when I was a kid. And I was like, wow, these things are, and they have the difference is they have now a chip. So you can choose to look at the picture before you print out the picture on this quick develop, you know, little squares of film, and all that. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty neat. But anyway, cool. Washi tape. All right, good. So there's going to be Emberwind themed. See you, Judo. Have a good dinner, man. Emberwind themed washi tape, basically. Is what
At
we're
some
looking
point, maybe.
That's
Sure,
Maybe.
yeah.
That's pretty slick. I like it. That's cool. All right. See, this is something now all of you will be able to go out and find out and say that you knew the final when you found. Where were you when you found out about washi tape? So we have got now about 10-15 minutes or so, which is perfect amount of time to get some questions from chat. So chat, the way this works, as you may remember, if you have done this before, is if you have a question for any of us, but if you have a question for Derek about Emberwind, or if you have a question for us about DMing in general, just type in question in all caps, : and then let us know what your question is. And it can be about anything we talked about. It can also be if you have a question about, hey, I have this obnoxious player who is bringing in electrical tape and pretending it's washi tape. What do I do about them? Like, we can handle that. So throw that question our way, and we will be ready to find out about it. So I do have, while we're waiting for questions, I have one question further for Derek, which is, it struck me when I was just looking at the washi tape and I saw the dice, you've got the play mats, all of these are connected, of course, to Emberwind as well. But I'm curious, is there a point, like, I can see a lot of merch for Emberwind working really well, right? But I'm wondering if there are things where I worked for a while at an electronics boutique back during my graduate school days, because newsflash, you don't survive on a graduate student's salary in Boston. So I was
Or
also
anywhere,
or
but,
anywhere,
yeah.
frankly. But so I was working there, and there was a point where Electronics Boutique started to basically jump the shark, and it was when they started carrying Pokemon themed underwear, and that's when I was like, yeah, we are kind of not in our target audience anymore. So I'm curious if there is a spot that people will be like, I have this idea for Emberwind, I don't know, frying pans. Like, is there a point where you're going to be like, this is not Emberwind quality? Like, does everything have to be focused in the game side? And I guess how much outside the box are you willing to think when it comes to products and stuff like that?
I mean, so first and foremost, EV is basically Hot Topic now. Just FYI,
I know. It became Forever 21, but the lame version of it. I know it. I'm believing.
Yeah.
I warned them back in the 90s, but.
But did anybody buy those underwear? That's the thing.
No, I
you
mean,
know.
like, and the numbers that would have, see, they kept talking about, just quickly, they kept talking about margin and being like, well, we have great margin. And I'm like, you want to know some of the best margin products? Hubcaps and porn. And there's a reason we don't sell either of them. And it's because one is stolen and the other is not appropriate for children under a certain age. Like, it's not just about margin.
Which is which?
Yeah, I
though?
know. That's But, you know, like, neither of those, like, there are plenty of high margin items that don't fit what we do, you know. So anyway,
Yeah.
Emberwind branded whiskey. See, there you go, Hilness. That's
Spaceballs, perfect example. Spaceballs, everything.
merchandising. Yeah.
Okay, so the whiskey thing may actually happen. I'm in communication with someone about that right now.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason why we're looking at that though is because certain types of alcohol figure really well into a unannounced campaign that we're working on. And because of that, it'd be really cool to do like a marketing stint where there's, you know, Emberwind themed beer and drinks and so forth.
Goldschlager, the Emberwind campaign.
Oh, at least pick a classier drink.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
But just that, yeah, there is a limit to how far I'm willing to take the merchandising, and really the merchandising that we are producing so far is all stuff that I as a gamer would want, and I also like make myself. So like I don't want anyone to ever be stuck in a situation where it's like, oh well, this is a randomly branded, you know, frying pan. Like what the hell am I gonna do with this? Make eggs, right? But yeah. So the Emberwind frying pan, not so much. If someone else wants to do that, that's cool. I won't tell them no. But yeah. It's not as far fetched as Emberwind porn, let's say, or Emberwind hubcaps.
I'm troubled by both of those, and I can't wait till John sees this video. So let's talk about, so I do have a question here from the Unabridged Gamer, which, by the way, good to see you again, Unabridged. So, question, how do you keep multiple major antagonists balanced? I've got several vying for my solo player, attention, and while one is the main, several others do need some time in the limelight. I currently use episodic format for the missions the player undertakes so that no plot overwhelms, but keeping it all balanced is a major concern. Any tips or advice is welcomed. I want to throw that to Dave first, because I know that Dave has had several large-scale campaigns, as have I, where there have been multiple, you know, the Emperor and Vader and, you know, several others, Grand Moff Tarkin, you know, on screen. So how do you keep that stuff balanced? And then, Derek, I'll want to ask you about how you think about doing that in Emberwind. You know, how much political intrigue and how much sort of villains vying with each other do you think the game can maintain? But let me start with Dave there first.
Well, I think the Unibridge Gamer answered himself. Just kind of do it episodic. Sorry, as I hack my brains out of it.
I thought you were just like, I had made it, like, my statement is done. Like,
yeah, just, I mean, all you have to do is just, you said it yourself, just keep each player in the spotlight, you know, let each character have their moments and just kind of rotate them like that. That's what I do.
Okay. Derek, what do you think about the,
but then again, some players don't want that at all. So, you know, if they don't want it, don't force it on them.
Okay, I have my own thoughts about that, but I'll get to that in a minute. Derek, what do you think about, can Emberwind, in your mind, are you thinking about multiple potential villain? And I know, obviously, Emberwind does have shades of gray going on depending on the world it's set up, but still, there are going to be characters that obviously the party will be opposed to. How does the game try to address, as a potentially GM-less system, does the game have possibilities of multiple villains, and how does that all get played in, do you think, in the game?
Totally. But before I get into that, are you sure you don't answer first? And guys, if there is Rule 34 for Emberwind, I am definitely not the person that's starting that.
Yes, quite so. Sure. I mean, I'll answer it first to give you a little more time to think about the Emberwood side of things. So, I agree with Dave and with you on Abridged Gamer that the episodic thing is one way to do it. The other thing I would say is that villains will often have different impacts on different players. There is often the big bad that everyone wants to fight, but more often there are subparts, or sub commanders, if you will, or multiple commanders, multiple villains that some players will react more poorly to than others. So as an example, I mentioned this when I talked about the highlight of the Adventures of Middle-earth campaign with the person that betrayed the party. The guy who was gone, Will's character, is not going to have the same hatred for this guy who betrayed him because he's not there at the moment as, let's say, Terry Toons and Trendane's character and Amal in particular's character is going to hate, because she reached out to try to make a connection to this character and thought that she had made the connection, and then the character basically, as she sees it, stabbed her in the back. She's going to hate that character. And so just as you want to highlight different moments where each person gets their moment to shine and the team gets a moment to shine. So the Avengers gets the epic sweeping around camera angle music, but then the Hulk gets to be badass and do the whole thing about that's my secret, Captain, I'm always angry, and all that stuff. Like the Hulk gets his moment, Captain America gets his moment, Iron Man gets his moment, Black Widow gets her moment, etc. That sort of thing, just as you're balancing it for the players, you also want to balance it in terms of the villains themselves. So a good example of this is when you have a ubiquitous villain, like in my D&D campaign right now, we're playing Curse of Strahd. The ubiquitous villain is Strahd von Zarovich. Unlike other campaigns where, he's sort of the shadowy man behind the curtain and then, he's the super guy. No, he's very clearly at the beginning. He directly screws with the players. He shows up in person. He toys with them when they're far too low level to do anything about it. It's all about him. What that means is that, yes, the party all hates Strahd, but it also means that so many people within Barovia have been impacted by Strahd that they themselves become, in some cases, shadows of Strahd. Some people who want to overthrow Strahd by becoming worse than him. Some people who want to become Strahd by destroy Strahd by destroying the place that Strahd rules, which obviously isn't a solution for the people still living in that place. There are many cases where individual people will say, I hate Strahd, but I really hate this guy who should know better than to go along with Strahd, but he's a coward and decided to be like the Vichy government, right? And basically go along with the Germans, and I'm not having it, right?
Wow,
and that is the person...
You broke out some history, some Vichy government. I haven't heard that since my graduate degree.
Thank you. But that sort of thing is really important to them. So I think that's one way to do it unabridged, is to make sure that each villain, don't assume that the one villain that you've put forward as the bad guy, that may not be the focus of all evil for the player. It may be somebody else, and that's great. That can lead to a lot of excitement of those moments as well. Okay, so Derek, now what do you think about that?
I mean, I had an answer, and I think I'm glad I let you go first, because this answer basically piggybacks off of yours a little bit. But the way that I approach it is a little bit different than how traditional kind of writing or world building would work, where I don't actually write villains at all. Because realistically, like if you think about the real world, there's no one who exists really, though it's arguable, and I'll get to that, that is truly evil, with maybe the exception of John, right? But
yeah, well, that's
yeah. But people are or seem evil from kind of your perspective, right? Your subjective perspective and experience of them. So rather than kind of write or try and ham fist a story where this is the specific villain or these are the possible antagonists that the player is supposed to think of as a villain, I prefer just kind of writing open-ended stories where every character is really a character first,
Mhm.
and the player, just based on their existence as the role of their character or just their own personal beliefs and morals, will kind of bleed into the world in a way where they'll self-identify and find kind of those antagonists to their goals on their own. And that, I think, is the best way to highlight or allow for an antagonist to be highlighted. It's to let the player kind of discover it on their own.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I mean, I think that's fair. In certain, because even Strahd would claim that there's a method to his madness. There's a reason that he exists, and the problem is that at a certain point, you have people eventually sit on a jury and make a decision, right? Either real, literal, or metaphorical, where eventually we make a decision that whatever, Adolf Hitler thought he was doing, he was wrong and evil. So there is a moment where society makes that judgment. And I guess that's the interesting thing, is not assuming what the judgment of the players will be. Maybe that's a way to sort of bridge what we're talking about here, Derek. It's not assuming that you write a character that everyone's just going to hate because they'll just hate him, but writing a character who has motivations of a kind that are probably likely to come into conflict with a lot of characters. That's probably more likely to happen, I would think. I mean, I'm just thinking back to Skies of Axia, and there were definitely things that happened where I'm like, yeah, these people, these people have got to go. And again, that was certainly from the perspective of my character. And I think you did a very good job in building the character of, in my case, Rook, that I was playing that way. But there are other aspects where that was happening also. So you're not getting any audio? No, you're not. No. I think it's Firefox. I don't believe I'm muted. Nope. You guys are not muted. Is everyone else hearing it okay? I do not have this muted on my end, so.
No, I can hear everything fine. I'm just in the other room. I had to step into the other room for
No,
a
that's
second.
fine. Yeah, I think it's just Firefox with the tab thing, maybe unabridged. I don't know. And Derek, I'm not sure, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, Erdenel hears it. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah. So I would say that that's probably the way to think about it, is that the motivations of the characters will come into conflict in some way, and that how one resolves those motivations is going to be interesting, I think. So yeah, that's something to think about, I guess. Okay, cool. Thank you, Judo. All right, so I think people can hear for the most part. Derek, you can still hear within Zoom, yes? Oh, maybe not. Derek, can you hear? Perhaps not. David can. Yeah, so he's gonna come out and come back in.
Yep, I
All
can
right.
hear you just fine.
Okay, that's what I thought. Cool. All right. So give me a second. We will get Derek back in a minute. I know the pictures are fouled up, so just bear with this for a moment. There we go. Can you hear us again, Derek? Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Check 1 2. Anything? Anything? Okay, so we are doing, let's see. Yeah, it says it might be. Okay. Can't hear anyone over Zoom or Twitch. Okay. In event of audio failure, can we communicate via ship signal flag? Like just semaphore, just like
Blink once for yes, blink twice for no.
Yeah, exactly. If you're being held by Skype and Twitch, please blink 3 times. Yeah, maybe unplug or replug the headphones would be what I would say, because yeah, I think we're fine. Oh, I hear something. I definitely hear things. I hear many things. I hear the sound of buzzing and then what sounds like clicking. So I think we can maybe hear Derek now, but I don't think.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yay.
Okay. So are you able to hear us again? No.
Yeah, I can hear everyone
Okay.
again.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fine. I think so. It just happened. I think it was either a Firefox thing. Okay, good, lovely. So
Sorry.
anyway, yeah. So just to finish up what we were saying with that. So yeah, that's just. I think that's one way to deal is where motivations themselves come into conflict, rather than thinking of it as like, I am the bad guy, mustache twirl. But I do think it's helpful to make those motivations clear and to make those motivations which the party can feel good in condemning. What I don't like is when you get, and I don't even think it's good writing, is when you get everyone is the exact same shade of bland gray where no one really has moral conditions. That is also not the way the world works. There are people who have moral conditions that are strongly in disagreement with the overwhelming majority of society, and society has a right to make a judgment on the moral judgments of that person. So that is really the difference that I would say. But that said, I'm basically in agreement, Derek, with the way that you represented it. I think that's probably right. In the sort of way those things kind of go forward. And also there are times too. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Gamer. Yes, that's a good way to put it. Conflict comes from variety, not monotone. Exactly. And what somebody finds particularly repulsive, for some people it will be, if someone is bullied, sold into slavery, and that's what they encounter within a game, they will do everything to take down the slaver, even if there are other issues that like this wizard is gaining too much power or whatever. They will be like, nope, I don't give a damn, because the goddamn slaver has got to go because of their own backstory. And that can be really intriguing as well in terms of prioritizing what needs to be fought. So, all right. Well, so we'll have time for one last question quickly if one's got one. But then after that, we're coming to the end of the 2 hours. So we will need to wrap up here. So if anyone has one more quick question you can throw towards us, you can do so. Now is your time to talk to the person who is the head of the company that's going to soon be making an Emberwind brand whiskey. So definitely you want to check that out as soon as possible. Just joking.
I can't promise it'll be any good, but
but you're gonna make it. I'm completely only somewhat joking. But if anyone has any other questions, they can throw that at us now as I wait for the delay to be processed. Wait for it. Okay. Well, I think we have gone through a lot of stuff anyway. So I will, as we close up shop here, we will start with you, Derek. Again, thank you for hanging out with us and for being able to talk about this game. And I guess the last thing I would ask is, as you're on the way out, what would be the thing that you'd want people to, we posted links to chat in the web pages and we will do so again. Beyond that, what do you want people to be on the lookout for? Like, this is the awesome thing happening with Emberwind that you need to be aware of coming soon. Like, what's the thing that you want everyone to be really aware of? Like, whether it be going to a Discord or going to the forums or whatever the case may be.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely wonderful to be here.
My pleasure.
What I guess I want people to look out for isn't what's coming up on the horizon, but what's actually available now. There is the Hero Manual that's out in a beta, and it is currently undergoing development based on everyone's feedback that is shared all over forums as well as our fan Discord. I am not the owner of the fan Discord. I wanted to make sure that it was completely independent, so people who just really enjoyed it kind of created their own thing and is running with that now. So to get an invite to that, I think there's a link up on our forum somewhere, but please do check out our stuff. Play the game, try it, give us your feedback, because we'd love to hear from you. Because the more thoughts that we get in right now, the better the game is going to be, both by the time we deliver for Kickstarter and also just in general.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm just making sure that I type in my completely unrelated to Emberwind news story that was written for the Barbcat, since people know about this. But thank you again, Derek. It's a pleasure, and of course we will be chatting quite a bit in the new year. 2019 is going to be busy for me on a lot of levels professionally. I'm going to be continuing to do some work for these folks at Nomnivore and writing for Emberwind, and will also, of course, feature on my channel next month, starting an Emberwind campaign that will not involve me because I am maxed out in terms of what I can do, but it will have John, the person we've been making fun of quite a bit. But no, my good friend John Helfers will be GMing that, and it will star a group of people, and we'll be announcing the players for that very soon. We have pretty much all of them. We're just waiting for confirmation on one. That is going to be happening next month, and we've already actually scheduled it, so you will be waiting to see that. Also, Unmade Gaming, who stars, of course, we know that Unmade Gaming is on my Assignment Impossible campaign. Unmade Gaming will also be doing an Emberwind campaign as well. So there's 2 of those going live on Twitch next month, and hopefully you'll have a chance to check out both of them. So thank you again, Derek, for hanging with us. This was great. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And last but certainly not least, of course, again, as we said, for those of you who missed it, Askren is stepping back. So Askren will not be a part of the show or indeed Twitch for the foreseeable future. He's fine. He's okay. But he's just got to prioritize other things. And so hopefully we wish him the best and we'll have him back with us. We'll hopefully wish him the best, and, we'll hope to see him online and elsewhere in the future. And thanks for a wonderful year, Askren. Last but certainly not least, Dave, thank you again for coming in hurt and doing the job as always. I appreciate it. How did and what sort of things would you like to highlight in terms of where people can find your work, either on, offline, etc.? You're muted, I believe, Dave.
Red button. Red light here. Red light here means it's muted, Dave.
Yes.
Just
So
I got
I've
a new
heard.
headset. So you can find me in a couple of places. You can find me on my Patreon page, pretty active there. Digital Dungeon Master. You can also find me on Twitch, the Digital Dungeon Master as well. I'll be cutting back on my games. You can also find me on YouTube as well. So those are the 3 outlets that you could find me. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to shoot them my way. And yeah, that's it for me.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you for also being such a great part of the show, Dave. It was a pleasure. I'm looking forward to
Thanks.
a great 2019 as well. And
Well, we just signed that new lucrative contract.
I know.
I have to be here.
Now that
so-
we got, I think we've made it. Now that we have Cheez-Its behind us, I think that
We do.
changes everything. So, but thank you, Dave and Derek. Happy holidays to you both. And I will speak to both of you for different reasons in the new year. So, chat, can we get some love for the wonderful members of the Masters of the Dungeon show? And then we will continue with my cast, but that's going to be it for these folks. So thank you to Derek, thank you to Dave, and we'll see all of you very soon. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and
Bye,
thanks to
everybody.
the audience too. See ya.
Thanks to all you, the
Yeah.
viewers out there.
Woo!
Without you, this would not be possible. Well, it would be possible. I mean, we could literally talk to ourselves, but
But it would be
we
really
would
boring.
rather talk. Yeah, exactly.
Thank
and
you,
nice
guys.
to meet you, Derek, as well. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
All right. No, we're not done, Cloud, but we are done with Masters of the Dungeon. Thank you for everybody. And yes, I just want to make a quick note about that. I am going to be talking quite a bit about the new year, about the year that just passed. I'm going to be talking quite a bit about this stuff. But I want to thank everyone who has watched Masters of the Dungeon. This was our 14th show, so we've been doing this for over a year now. And I want to thank everyone who made this, started this up with me. Again, I have replacements that will be coming in to replace Askren, who's stepping back. But I really want to give Dave a shout out and thank him for being a part of this, because his insight has been great. And also to thank all of our guests. We've had a lot of them, including Derek. Thank you so much to him. And congratulations again on the success of Emberwind and everyone. And most of all, want to thank you folks in chat because you guys have been great. I know there's many of you who are really have made this a big part of it. Judo Killer, for example, I know was a big, really loves this show and has talked about it being a big deal. And I didn't realize, Judo, by the way, that you had also streamed on GOG at one point. I don't know why, for some reason, I missed that. But I saw there were some old clips of stuff and quotes where you had actually played stuff for us. That was cool. So anyway, but it's good to be able to have the folks on chat with us. So thank you all. And please continue to spread the word, because that is the way to make all this happen. Thank you to all the viewers and so forth. We're going to stop the recording, not the stream. We're just going to stop the recording. And then I am going to restart the recording with the new stuff that we're going to be doing next. So don't leave, don't go anywhere. We're going to be doing top 5 stuff, and then we're going to go back to Bard's Tale, but we are going to be doing top 5 lists in just a minute. So for those of you watching Masters of the Dungeon, thank you all, and I'll be right back to you in 2019. Thanks to the viewers for the Masters of the Dungeon stuff, and Happy New Year.